We have been on a bit of a journey, a scientific experiment,
Yeah.
medical testing. We have the most incredible spice cupboard now.
It's my pride and joy.
It is absolutely Car's pride and joy, and it's so well organized.
Yeah.
It's like color coded and
Alphabetical.
yeah. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Coffee Talks. I'm Michael, this is Cara. If you've been here for a while, you know what it's all about. If you're here for the first time, you have come to the best episode yet.
Yeah.
This
We haven't even done it yet, but
we we're that
It is
confident.
the
We're
best
that
episode.
confident. It's going to be that good. We have been on a bit of a journey, a scientific experiment,
yeah.
medical testing. Not really, but we have been for the last 90 days on a journey with our diets.
Yep.
And we're going to share the results of that with you today. So it's
Not done in a lab. No science
yeah,
involved. Just purely our
experience.
unbiased opinion.
Yeah. I would say, having done it for 90 days, we probably have good grounds to make some claims on them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, as with everything, this is our experience. We're not telling you to do this or whatever. So take what we say, try it for yourself, see what you think, come back to us, tell us what your feedback is. That would be amazing. But before we do that, recently we launched, I guess, a newsletter called The Weekly Mainstay. It's all of our best bits. So the stuff that you don't see on camera, our best kind of advice in terms of training, nutrition, mindset. There's a lot of that in there. You kind of get a better glimpse into, I guess, the life of a professional footballer and coaches. So people who are kind of actually living what we're talking about. So if you want to sign up to that, head to our website, themainstaymovement.co.uk, drop your email in the little subscribe box, and you will be into that select group.
And there'll be plenty more that we'll start to build out on that, particularly from a training point of view. So we'll be starting some things in the next couple of weeks that you'll have very first access to as part of that exclusive club.
Nice. With that said, let's get stuck right into the last 90 days. We're bringing you our top three. The three biggest changes that we kind of made to our diet, and what the outcomes of that have been. So before we bring you those, let's get, I suppose, the what and the why.
Yeah.
Why have we done it? What exactly have we done? And then you'll find out what those three are.
So do you want to talk first about your
Sure.
history?
Yeah. So if you know much about me, I am overly sensitive. I guess my stomach and my gut has always reacted to certain foods, types of foods, certain ingredients in foods. And so for years, I have kind of gone on like a yo-yo of, all right, let's remove this from my diet and see what difference it makes. Generally, it makes a good difference. And so at some point, I'll like reincorporate what I've taken out to see then, has my stomach healed, or do I have an intolerance? I've done all the intolerance testing. And to be honest, they give you a list of more foods than you even think exists. So there's very little food to choose from once you kind of see those lists. So for years I've kind of gone on that cycle of just take it out, add it in, see what works, see what doesn't work, and then you just get into routines of you know, you kind of just start to manage like your bloating and your like the pain in your stomach, and you kind of justify it with, oh, it doesn't last that long, so I'll just keep doing what I'm doing.
And the taste outweighs the like negative side.
Exactly, yeah,
feeling crap.
So that's a massive thing as well. And then I suppose from another kind of health perspective as well, I suffer with psoriasis, which is a skin condition, and a lot of that is kind of related to like your immune cells and how they kind of like fight against themselves, and a lot of it is diet related as well as kind of stress and some other factors. So when you kind of manage your diet better, generally like I'll notice that my skin improves too. So there's so many reasons why over the years I've kind of, you know, gone on these different cycles of trying new things, taking things out, like all that sort of thing. But the reality is, after probably a month or 2 months of doing anything, I just kind of slip back into what I'm used to, what I enjoy, and those kind of, I guess, routines.
Yeah, and whenever you're living with someone and we're cooking as a couple, obviously, then it's probably easier for you to just compromise and just eat whatever I'm gonna eat, because you're like, no, I can just sort of deal with it.
Yeah, definitely. And so some of that has been quite interesting, because a lot of it for me, and I suppose it kind of takes us straight to the first thing. A lot of it's kind of that like overly processed or refined foods, so the likes of your kind of rices or pastas, that type of thing, and so that kind of, as I said, it takes to our first change. So
what we have made a big point of is trying to really draw back on and limit the amount of refined or overly processed foods, but particularly when it comes to carbohydrates. So like there's refined carbohydrates and there's complex carbohydrates. So the refined ones are things like white bread, white rice, cereal bars, basically anything that it's kind of just stripping away something from its natural state, and basically takes away the nutrients and the vitamins that you would find in that, and stripping away the fiber as well. Whereas a complex carbohydrate is stuff like whole grains, so like brown rice, brown bread, anything in its natural state, so like vegetables and potatoes and things like that, which are higher in fiber and then keep you fuller for longer. So we've really made a point of trying to move towards those more complex carbohydrates, and then really draw back on the likes of rice, which we probably consumed in around like 4 or 5 times a week. So they were like a real sort of staple, like real mainstay, I guess, for us, because like we would have made like chili and like a curry one night, which was rice based, and there was so many things that were just based on rice, because it's cheap, it's quick, and it just goes with so many things. It's so versatile, and I guess that's why we were so kind of heavily focused on that and based on that.
And I think that's another thing to add, is anything that is like overly processed generally tastes really good, but it's because of all the stuff that's added into it. Like, so if you kind of pick up a packet of food, whatever it is, and look at the label, generally the more ingredients that are in something, the better it tastes. But then I guess the worse it is, you know, for your insides. So that's number one. Number two is all about sauces and seasonings. So how many people, when they're doing their shopping, go along the aisle with the jars and the sauces and all that sort of thing, and literally you'll lift, you know, a bolognese sauce, or you'll lift whatever it is, because it's quick and easy, you know, and it's been there for years. It's always been part of your routine. It's safe, it's quick, it's easy. We have the most incredible spice cupboard now.
It's my pride and joy.
It is absolutely Cara's pride and joy, and it's so well organised. It's like colour coded and
alphabetical.
But the difference that has made has been absolutely huge. And actually, what we found is the quality of like the flavor is astronomical. Like it's phenomenal in comparison to what you can buy off a shelf.
Yeah, and if you have downloaded Mainstay Meals, you'll notice that pretty much with every recipe or meal, you'll have your main ingredients for what goes in the actual meal itself, and then below that there'll be like the garnish or the dressing, and that's all like made naturally rather than just buying a sauce to top on the top of it. So we'll make every single dressing fresh from scratch, which it was probably something that we didn't do before we reached for sort of convenience.
Yeah. So yeah, that's been a huge one. I mean, that's so straightforward. There's not an awful lot to kind of like go around that. And the third thing then is, instead of planning your dinner or your meals around what meat you're going to put in it, we've started to plan around what kind of plants and what veg we're going to use. So again, like, you know, going back to that first point of like a chicken curry with rice, you know, it's something that just like, that just writes itself. But actually now we're kind of getting to the point where we're being more creative with, okay, we're starting with couscous, or we're starting with quinoa, or like whatever it is we're starting with sweet potatoes, and then what goes well with all that stuff, you know. So like we're experimenting with chickpeas and, you know, different types of beans and that sort of thing, and that has been massive. Yeah,
so when we say we're plant-based, we're talking about the fact that plants are the basis of every meal, as opposed to whenever you hear that, you generally think, well, then you don't eat meat at all. But meat is kind of the final component of our foods and our recipes now, as opposed to it being the first thing. And then you kind of go with like your meat or your protein source, then you'll maybe move to your carb source after that, and finally then you'll come to the veg, and it's maybe a bit of an afterthought, or you'll scatter like a bit of, just throw a little bit of green stuff on the side, just because it gives it a bit of colour. But rather we're kind of trying to reverse that, so we're going from that plant base and then moving towards like your protein source or your meat at the end. But not to say that we're like putting protein as the least important, but actually whenever you look at those sorts of like plants, it's crazy how much protein you actually get from those as well. And you probably don't need to just go straight to the protein and think that's the most important thing and that's what you need, and that only comes from that meat source.
Yeah, class. And so with those kind of three, what would you say are your kind of like, what have been the benefits for you? Do you feel any different? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, so I'm less sensitive than you.
Most
just
people
in
are.
general.
Most people are.
Emotionally, everything.
Wow, there we go.
So I never really felt like I reacted badly to those sorts of foods, maybe in the way that you did, but I definitely feel like I wouldn't even have said that I really overly noticed bloating, but I can tell the difference now. Feel more energized, and I don't know, it's just like you feel fresh or something. It's so hard to actually like articulate what that feeling is like, but it all just kind of comes down to like variety. Like, we're not saying that we'll never eat rice again, 100% not. We still do eat rice during the week, but it's that variety, and yeah, just exposing your body to so many different types of like carbohydrates or plants. Yeah,
and I think that's kind of the thing for me, is like the bloating, but also then I'd had like really bad pain in my stomach after I had certain things for like maybe just an hour, but it's an hour now where I'm not, you know, I'm not in that pain, so that's been huge. But I think for me the big thing has been like the energy levels. So I think, you know, one thing to note is when you do change your diet, generally your energy level will dip for a while, because your body has to then figure out where the where the new energy's coming from. So you know, it's so easy for your body to like get used to one energy source. So whether that be like, you know, your passes and your rices and that sort of thing, and then all of a sudden it's now got to get its energy somewhere else. So there definitely was probably a week or 10 days of just like a dip, but now it's just, yeah,
Your body's had that reset.
yeah, just reset, and you just feel generally better and more energized. So it's been a great 90 days. We're gonna keep doing it.
I think one thing that I would just point out as well finally is that this is pretty much looking at things from like a health perspective lens as opposed to performance. And I have to be very careful that my performance doesn't suffer because I still need to get some energy from those refined carbohydrates. Okay, so I still need to have like a sports drink, an energy drink at halftime in a game. I'll still need to take those gels or those things that will give me that quick burst of energy. I'll maybe need to have like a bagel pre-match, which is a white bread. It's a refined carbohydrate source. So those things like I'm still putting in on like match days and match day -1. So it's kind of that 80-20 rule and that balance of knowing what I need to perform, but knowing what I need for overall health as well. So where I can, just trying to sprinkle in those types of things, but the bulk of what I'm eating being from that health lens.
Yeah, and that 80-20 rule is kind of the big thing. And I know we've kind of mentioned stuff like this before, you know, where you don't want to limit yourself and like create so many like good positive like habits that, you know, you don't enjoy life anymore.
Yeah.
You know, so, and even just another one, like we've started drinking like alcohol-free beers.
Yeah.
You know, where sometimes after a game or, you know, after a big kind of training session, it's just nice to have a bit of a treat. But you know, you can still enjoy those things in a slightly different form. So yeah, I mean, you got to enjoy yourself. You can't take life so seriously, but all of this stuff is just super beneficial for your kind of long-term health. So before we kind of wrap things up, well, there's two things. First of all, if you're watching on YouTube, thank you. Please subscribe to our channel, like the video and leave a comment. It really helps us kind of grow this thing and get our message out there. So yeah, thanks for being part of it. The second thing is our one for the road. It's our kind of takeaway that we do after every single discussion, and it's just to get you involved a little bit more. So this week's really simple.
It's 3 words: check your labels. So whenever you purchase anything from the supermarket this week, just if it's 1 or 2 things, have a look at the back of the packet, see how many ingredients on the back of it you actually recognize the names of, and just have a look at how many ingredients are on the back of that packet. If it's more than probably 5, then you can kind of count that as an overly processed food. And yeah, just if that changes your mindset or your thinking, try and look for alternatives for those sorts of things. We're gonna come at you this week probably with some like easy swaps, things that you can kind of bring in like for like, to swap those overly processed ones for maybe a less processed. Ultimately, a lot of our food is processed to some extent, but if you can go with that lesser processed, then it's going to be better for you and more beneficial for your health in the long term.
Nice. With that, thank you for joining us. We will see you on the next one.